Hello, everyone. Welcome to ELI, the place where you get your daily dose of inspiration for entrepreneurship. And today we have with us Mr. Vineet Khanna, who is the founder of Supertails, which is building a digital pet care platform that offers expert-led healthcare services and products. Hi, Mr. Vineet. Welcome to ELI.
Hi, Priya, and hi to everybody tuning in to listen the LI podcast. It's an honor to be here. Looking forward to the discussion.
Honor is all ours. I would request you to introduce yourself, and when you introduce, tell us a little bit about your background prior to entrepreneurship, and you can tell us a little bit about your childhood as well. We would love to hear that.
Super. So, hi everyone. I'm Vineet Khanna. I come from the city of Kanpur, born and brought up there, a small town boy, if you may call it. Went on to do my engineering from NIT Nagpur. I am an electrical engineer. Straight away went on to do my MBA from IIM Lucknow. This is 2009. Joined a large company, which was the Tata Group. So I am a part of the Tata Administrative Services program. Was with the Tata Group for about 5.5 years, worked with companies like Titan, Tata Motors, and Tata Housing. Uh, there was an urge to join startups and that to e-commerce back in 2014. So yeah, Tata Group, even with its 120 companies at that point in time, wasn't doing e-commerce. Tata Click had not been formed.
Hmm.
So joined Snapdeal in 2014. Again, it was a startup. Uh, that is where my supply chain journey started with setting up the transportation network, went on to head warehousing at Snapdeal, and then was heading the entire fulfillment at Snapdeal. 2017, I joined another exciting startup called Licious. Licious is a story well known. It was became
Yeah.
the first D2C unicorn of the country. Joined them pretty early. Was involved in the entire, you can say 1 to 100 kind of a growth journey. Was looking after supply chain again, looking at last mile delivery, micro market expansion, as well as infrastructure development. Come 2020, Licious was on the right side of the pandemic. Demand went through the roof. We chased it, well enough. But after having done that, there was this feeling that I think, all three of us had. We all were working together at Licious, and that we feel it's like, when you've scaled something as difficult as a Mount Everest, when you come back home, you feel a void, and you
Yeah.
feel that there needs to be something very exciting to fill that void. We obviously had theories around pet care, which I'll talk about, during the discussion.
Hmm.
But it was that void that needed to be fulfilled, and we felt only, starting something of our own could give us the excitement that was equal to what we had done in the early phases of COVID, trying to scale up Licious. So yeah, that was one large trigger which led all three of us to start Supertails.com. Supertails is an integrated pet care, digitally first platform, which takes care of, all the primary needs of a Gen Z and millennial pet parent. In India, pet care is growing largely on the backing of the Gen Z and the millennial adopting more pets. So we take care of all the primary needs, from their supplies to their healthcare consultations, as well as their behavior and training consultations. These constitute the, so as to say, roti kapda and makan of this category.
Hmm.
So that's what Supertails takes care of.
So, when you were planning on building Supertails, how did you formulate the hypothesis of this venture? I mean, was it because your background in pets? Do you own pets, or do you have orientation towards pets, or was it because of large market that is lying vacant in India?
So actually, all of it. Obviously, have been a pet parent, back in my hometown, as well as even now in Bangalore. But what was interesting was we were looking at categories to enter, and we saw, what happens when the GDP of a country increases. Interestingly, in India, while people earn money in India, one more interesting thing happens is that people marry later.
Correct.
Now, when people marry later, you would have seen, our grandparents would have gotten married at a different age. Our parents at a different one. And, today, even getting married earlier than 30 is considered very early.
Hmm.
So people, if they are marrying later, they have more disposable income, they will spend on themselves. What it also means is, in parallel in India, the fertility rate is dropping considerably. So
Yeah.
which means lesser number of children as well. But there is one interesting thing about humans. We are all slaves of our hormones, and there is this
Hmm.
hormone called oxytocin, which each one of us needs,
Hmm.
which comes from companionship, loving, kissing, and relationships. Now,
Hmm.
if you're not marrying and you're not having children, what is the next obvious best thing?
Hmm.
uh, it's not pets, it's actually dating. And which is why in 2017, 18, Tinder, Bumble, and all those companies came into the country, and made there is a lot of adoption that happened.
Hmm.
But when COVID happened, and we had this theory that the next best thing to solving for oxytocin is our pets, and this is well researched. They solve for mental health, they solve for companionship, etc. But when COVID happened, this theory was, only in our mind. There was no white paper or research paper written on it. But what we saw was, when there was a lockdown, the next best thing that people could have done was again dating, because people were lonely, they were at home, etc. But even that couldn't happen, because even Tinder and Bumble was not available. It was a physical lockdown.
Hmm.
So logically, people should have kept more pets. And yes, we did see that. Early 2020, the second quarter after the first lockdown, when we tried to reach to our vets for their usual, checkup and appointments, we were not getting appointments. And we asked our vets, and they said, here people have just kept pets left, right, and center. In fact, we are hiring vets.
Hmm.
So it is, for an entrepreneur, it is a very exciting thing that you have a theory. And we had this theory, almost from 2017, and when you see it play out right in front of you, it is very, very tempting to not go for it. Obviously, we were passionate pet parents, which was an added advantage and an added variable for us to jump into this category.
Hmm.
But the opportunity was so beautiful that we felt that this is a category which is going to grow, even far and beyond COVID, which we are seeing now. And that was the
Correct.
reason for us to enter the category.
Yeah. Just to add on to your point, I think I was working for a veterinary software company, and I
Mhm.
was doing some research around the same point you just mentioned. When countries tend to grow in GDP, they tend the pet adoption, the number of pets per person tends to increase, and that happened with China recently.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that adds to your hypothesis. Having said that, tell us. For pet industry, there is a existing infrastructure, existing ecosystem in place. For example, there is a lot of veterinary hospitals chains and pet food products and other products as well. So the type of venture you are trying to build, is it a tried and tested model in other markets? How did you get this idea? As in, there are a lot of things you can do in the pet industry, but the kind of what is it that you are trying to build with Supertails?
Yeah, very interesting. In fact, it took us a lot of time to understand what is going to be the right model for India. Now, interestingly, why we could not take complete inspiration from the West and other countries was that like, consider an example of US, which is more than $130 billion pet care market. But over there, 67% of the households have pets. B, more than 80% of the pet parents over there are second or third time pet parents.
Hmm.
Whereas in India, the penetration is less than 10% or closer to 10% at this point in time. As well as more than 90% of the pet parents who are adopting pets are first time pet parents, which means the problem of an Indian pet parent is
Hmm.
going to be very different from that of anybody else.
Hmm.
Now, earlier there was, so in US you might have a 35-year-old or a 45-year-old adopting a pet because it is their second pet. But in
mm,
India, this growth is coming from Gen Z and a millennial who might not be married, but is feels that he has become responsible, he or she has become responsible enough to take care of another living being. Now
mm,
imagine this 25-year-old bachelor, let's say, who lives in Indranagar in Bangalore, decides to keep a dog.
mm,
Uh, Now, which is where they follow a very interesting concept called the Dunning-Kruger, which means the less you know, the more confident you are. So,
mm,
this person is extremely confident that their mental life will change. Maybe they'll probably get more right swipes on Tinder, etc. When they will get a pet home, when they mention themselves as a pet, dad,
mm,
and they bring the pet home. Now imagine, consider this compared to a baby care scenario wherein when you decide to have a baby, it is about 8 months that you are mentally, physically, and the entire ecosystem is prepared.
mm,
Also, there is a lot of wisdom in the family. There is a chachi, nani, tai, masi. Sorry for being gender specific there, but it is what it is.
mm,
And yeah, that all exists. But this person, when they bring the pet home, they are high on confidence, and within 6 to 9 hours,
mm,
they face the reality. Managing a living being, and that to a baby, similar to a baby, is not easy. There are,
yeah,
on day one, you will have the dog scratching the sofa, biting on the shoes, peeing and pooping everywhere. We don't know what to feed, we don't know how to vaccinate. There's a lot of unknown areas.
mm,
And then you also know that as the time passes by, the end state is that of love and companionship, and there is a lot of love sitting there.
mm,
So what we said, in India, if we were to solve something, we were solve for this phase, and which we, in theory terms, we call it the valley of despair.
yes,
If we can shallow this valley of despair, we can solve for pet parenthood for the Indian pet parent who is first time. What was interesting was also, it is during this phase itself is that a lot of abandonment happens.
mm,
And so it is, if we solve for this, there will be more people encouraged to become pet parents,
mm,
provided we become big, and pet care even grows in India.
yeah,
So that was the vision, that was the thought with which we said, if we can solve for making the pet parenthood enjoyable and wholesome rather than troublesome and leading to abandonment,
mm,
that is what Supertails will do. What it also meant was that we will need to solve the most important problems, and all of them together. So in US, you might have a veterinary chain which might run independently. There might be a food brand in pet nutrition which might run independently. There might be a D2C online platform, a vertical platform like Chewy, which exists
mm,
separately. So there are many verticals of a vertical. But when the size of the market is small, when the market is not as evolved, typically it would get built together. And that
yeah,
was the idea with which we built supertails.com, which is why it is an integrated pet care destination, wherein you find supplies as well as their primary services. And when I mean primary services, these are healthcare and behavior training,
mm,
not the secondary services, which could be grooming, walking, sitting, etc. Abandonment won't happen because of grooming not available,
mm,
but abandonment might happen because the dog is not trained or is not getting proper health care. So with this thought process, Supertails was built. And to be very honest, because the problem of India is unique, the business model is also slightly unique, which is a combination of products and services,
mm,
and which is why we could not take a very direct inspiration from anybody outside.
got it. Uh, the next question that comes to my mind is, how do you gave example of the 25-year-old who was adopted a dog. So they face a lot of challenges. They're probably searching everywhere for a solution. How do they discover super tails? What is the journey they take?
So a lot of places, Priya. See, this 25-year-old is also a digitally active, digitally savvy individual. So they will be there. There is somebody is in a and is digitally active. Who do they go out to? obviously they go out to fellow pet parents and ask from them, but the chances over here that the fellow pet parent is also a first time pet parent and in the same boat are also high, which means you don't get too many right answers immediately because information is limited and there is a large gap. The next thing that they do is go over the internet, go to Google, go to, lesser, more to Google, lesser to maybe Facebook and Instagram, but try to ask and, find these questions. They will probably go to Quora, they will probably go to other blogs, etc., and try to find this information. So what we do is obviously we make ourselves available on all these platforms so that they can discover Supertails. If you're searching for any query, not just for just the transactional keywords like buying dog food or buying dog collars, etc., but for informational keywords as well, so we will be available there. We have answered more than 2000 questions on Quora, which is people asking about how do they take care of their pet, what to feed, what not to feed, etc., etc. So we need to first fulfill the information gap in this category for us to make people aware about us, and then because what we are giving them as a solution is the right one, they will develop trust with us, and then obviously the transaction becomes coincidental, and the transaction happens.
Mm.
So various platforms, whether be it offline communities, online communities like Quora, Instagram, etc., transactional platforms like Google, or wherever this digitally active person is, we will need to be present to find that person and bring him into the platform.
Mm.
Once he is on the platform, we will take care of his other than product needs also. We have a very unique concept called a pet relationship manager, who gets in touch with the customer, understands his or her problems with respect to pet parenthood, introduces them to a vet, which is a medical expert or a behavior expert, which solves the problem of that pet parent, and then the trust on the platform increases significantly. So it's not just a very a simple one. It is a very integrated solution, wherein you need to solve for information as well as for supplies.
Mm. Give us a perspective on how big is the platform right now. What is the scale in terms of how many pet owners come to your platform? How many agents are there to help? What's the how many brands do engage with you?
Super. So Priya, we have by God's grace, we've already become the largest assortment of verticalized pet care in the country. So we have more than 12,000 SKUs. We have a customer base in excess of 1.5 lakh pet parents now. We are more than 100 crore annualized run rate, brand. So which clearly shows that the market was underserved. What to some extent we are doing is received well by the pet parents. Our retention numbers look good. All the metrics in which you feel that you are doing something right. Obviously, we've just scratched the surface. The market is $1 billion market at this point in time,
Mm.
growing at a more than 20% CAGR year on year. Not many categories enjoy that kind of a growth at this point in time. So yeah, the future is bright. I think what we are doing, the first 2 years, and we are just 2 years old. The first 2 years clearly show that yes, we have been able to make, a reasonable, I would not say significant, but a reasonable impact in the category.
Mm.
And yeah, we just need to continue solving problems of pet parents, and I think hopefully we'll become a larger company.
Got it. So now we will try to cover the personal side of being an entrepreneur. So tell us, when did the entrepreneurial bug came into you? When did you start thinking about entrepreneurship? And what made you leave Tata Group, which is such a stable brand, and very few people leave Tata Group in the first place?
Yeah, Priya, when I joined TAS, two things I learned over there. First was people management, because TAS is a program wherein you work with people at times you who are older than you. You know, you might have people in your team who are older and more experienced than you. So that was a big learning phase for me as to how, and I it was my first job. So it was a very big learning phase for me. uh, Also, I understood how do companies operate, and as I was going through the journey, I understood that I was a person who really wanted an action, or an input to result into an output. And while I would not say ASAP, but as quickly as possible, so that you know what is to be done and what is not to be done. What that part of my professional career taught me was, how to uh, work with people. But what when at the moment I joined, smaller organizations or startups, I understood that, it teaches you so many more things, which is not what is to be done, but what is not to be done more. Because you have a lot of leeway in doing experiments every day. And I'm a person who always, enjoys experimentation. As a company also, we have a culture of experimentation.
mm,
Once I started understanding that, by just doing 5 experiments, either I'm making one of it successful, or I'm making 5 choices out of my consideration set. If they are not working, I will arrive at the right thing sooner than later.
mm,
And that was one very important element of saying it, because entrepreneurship is all about trying, all about finding a problem, all about solving a problem by doing a lot of experimentation. Problem solving was something which came as a very nice thing whenever I worked with startup. It was always very rewarding, very satisfying, etc.
mm,
So that's from where entrepreneurship started. And quite honestly, nobody in my family had been an entrepreneur. So yeah, it had to start from me itself. And once I found people on the journey, so Varun, who's one of my co-founder, I've known him for 15 years. He was my junior at campus, and we would only discuss, okay, what does it mean to solve a problem, and solve a problem through an organization which is your own.
mm,
Then we met Aman on our journey at Licious. We were, solving problems again together. I think entrepreneurship also comes with the fact of, the having the comfort of doing it with people around with you.
mm,
Professionally and personally, all three of us knew each other so well. It was like we had dated so long enough that it was almost inevitable to get married.
mm,
And then when professional thought processes align, the vision aligns, the way we work, while it might be complementary to each other, but together as a group, all of that aligned. I think it entrepreneurship does not happen, at least it not happened to me on one fine day. It was a journey, right from a very established Tata group to working with startups, then having working with people whom I was comfortable in trying out new things. All
mm.
of this led to taking this plunge.
Got it. Speaking of people, so what happens is, let's say you got lucky while finding founders, co-founders, but what about the next level people? How did you convince them to pursue uh, this dream with you? Uh, I mean, when you did not have funding, or you didn't have, a clear model in mind, or maybe you had a clear thing in mind, but there was no reality around it. How did you convince them? How did you motivate them?
So, Priya, see, in the past, having worked in startups, handling large teams in both Snapdeal and Licious, all three of us only pitched one thing. We have worked with more than 1,000 people, directly or indirectly in the last 5 years or 7 years or so. What we are very confident of is that you go and speak to any one of those people, you will in all probability hear good about us. You in all probability, we are people who learn from other people, as well as try to make them succeed as well.
Hmm,
A founder is limited by his team, his or her team.
hmm,
So when if we don't enable them, or we don't manage them scaling up, the it becomes a constraint to the organization itself. That was our promise. We also had at least the credentials to show that we had built companies from early stages to relatively very large companies, managed large amount of teams, also seen the investor side of things. So yeah, it was a as a package, the three of us brought a lot of skills together, which we were able to convince. After all, the first few people are only the ones who share your dream, and if you
Mm,
can explain your dream very well, and believe that they are culturally fit to share and live that dream in with you, believe in you, not worry about the outcome but worry about the input at the beginning, I think things will fall into place. And that's how we approached everybody that we met. Luckily, with all these variables and our past in the mind, we found a very good team, and we found it quickly as well.
what would you say are some of the top lessons that you have learned during your entrepreneurial journey that we can take away and probably apply to our ventures as well?
The first thing is never say never. Never have a notion ki I've as an organization, as a person, as a manager, as a friend, as a colleague, I will not do this. In this situation, what you might not do is right, but situations keep changing, so you need to adapt very quickly. I think the faster you adapt, the faster is the success of any of these relationships, whether it is a peer, a manager, a team person, a partner, or as a company as a whole.
Mm,
Second learning we've at least found very very successful at our place, which I have mentioned earlier as well, is never stop experimenting. If you're not doing at least three experiments in a day, that day you have learned lesser than another day. So keep doing that every day. You will, even if it fails, a lot more than what you did yesterday. So I
mm,
think that remains to be a very very important thing. And in third would be, when you build any organization, typically people build it for first the investors, then the customers, and then the people, with investors being the stakeholder shareholders. We always have believed that if you take care of the people will build something which will take care of the customers,
mm,
which will make the customers happy. If the customers are happy, the business will flourish, and there is no business which flourishes in which the stakeholders or the shareholders aren't happy. So
mm.
instead of looking at it from this way, if you just manage and motivate and inspire your team every day, I think everything else becomes a lot easier.
Correct. And here is my final question. Tell us, what is entrepreneurship as per you? How would you define the term entrepreneur, or who is an entrepreneur as per you, or what is the skill sets that make an entrepreneur?
Entrepreneurs are not any different here. They're same flesh and blood. The only thing is entrepreneurship is a little bit lonely as compared to working in an organization. Why you say lonely? Because everything stops at you. There is no problem in which you could say, yeah, okay, this, if I don't take care of, somebody else will. But everything at the organization as a set of founders culminates at you. So yeah, at times it makes you little far away and makes you a little lonely at times. That's why it is very important to have a set of founders with whom you can very openly discuss, share. When the chips are down, you're able to speak to them and are able to come up, because it might happen with one of the founders or with all of them together. But as a group, there needs to be a lot of motivation and egging up of each other. So that remains as one very important thing that I believe is on is instrumental in the success of an organization.
Good. Well, I think on this note, we will close the session. Thanks for your time, Vineet, and it was a pleasure to have you on our platform.
Thank you, Priya. Thank you. It was lovely, living through the entire journey. It was almost like deja vu, living through the last 2 years through this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.